So let's also read one other verse here. 1 Samuel chapter 2 and verse 30. I'll read the second portion of it. It says, But now the Lord said, Be it far from me, for them that honor me, I will honor. For them that honor me, I will honor. Life is a series of choices, right? It's a series of choices, and those choices most of the time are given to us. If you look at a mighty oak, a big oak tree, where does it come from? It comes from a small acorn, right? A big mustard plant comes out of a small little seed. So, the decisions we make do take us further in our lives. We all, in different ages, we might have probably taken many decisions in our lives. When you were young, when you were going to college, or when you were having a decision to take, to get married, or when you had a decision to take a job. Life is a series of choices, decisions, and a lot more to that. And every person has those decisions. And whom shall I marry? Whom shall I make a friend? And what music shall I listen? And what shall I drink? What drug should I take? Or should I keep myself pure? So, some point in time, we are all at a yellow street in the forest, and it's all about choices and decisions. If you come to an intersection, you are given a decision to either take one direction or the other direction. And that decision influences your life very much. So, it's all about, what we decide, what we choose, and how we choose. Not all decisions that we take in our lives do give us joy, do give us satisfaction. Some people might have had this experience, if I had taken this decision when I was in my college, I would rather be a doctor than a software engineer, right? Decisions, you can't revert back whatever you decided 20 or 30 years back. So life is a series of choices and decisions. So if you look at this young teenager boy, a Jewish noble boy, Daniel, he was a teenager. He was in Jerusalem, and he was in crisis with the Babylonian king, and he is now into the hands of a pagan king called Nebuchadnezzar. Here starts the story. The operation assimilation. Assimilation here is absorption or adoption. So if you think Daniel and his friends, what are the friends? Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego. These three friends, they were taken into captivity by the king Nebuchadnezzar. You can read that from the first chapter of Daniel and then all the first 3 verses. So this young man, they were pretty good. These young dynamic men were pretty noble in their backgrounds. And what the king said was, the king ordered them to take these 3 men into service. To serve the king in his empire. The king ordered these 3 men to be part of his service. If you think of these people are God-fearing Jewish teenagers who are ripped completely by the king of Nebuchadnezzar. They probably might have destroyed everything they had known or everything they had had, and then they brought them to this Babylonian empire to work for this pagan king, to be trained first of all for the Babylonian culture, and then to work for the king. So here becomes the assimilation of forgetting what they were in the Jewish family, in the Jewish culture, and then trying to absorb them into this Babylonian culture. The first thing, the king did was, he changed his names. What did they call the names? Daniel, they called it? Belteshazzar? Shadrach? So they changed the name. The primary reason they want to change the name is, they want them to forget what their past was. A new name is given to them so they could forget what their past was, and then they could see what, they want to basically, transform these people, completely assimilate these people into that Babylonian culture. So the first thing is, Daniel tested. So, Daniel was tested on many things, many different things when they were taken into captivity. So everything happened smoothly for them. They changed the names. They asked them, they would have changed the attire of these people, given them new costumes, and they would have changed, many things, on the Babylonian culture. And then, now comes a point, Daniel is saying that, enough. I'm not going to take this anymore. He wants to draw a line in the sand saying that enough is enough, and I'm going to take my stake, and then I'm going to say no. God bless these young men for the courage they had. It's not, we might think that sometimes it's more common sense, but it's not. These people were pretty sure, especially Daniel was very sure what he wanted to do, what he wanted to get. So, what Daniel took, what decision Daniel took during this time, that shaped his life for the next 60 years. If you look at verse, the last verse of Daniel 1 chapter 21, it says, Daniel remained there until the first year of King Cyrus. So the first reign of King Nebuchadnezzar and the king of King Cyrus, 60 years of his life, he served for pagan kings. The one decision he took, saying that, I'm not going to defile myself. I took it with purpose. I resolved myself, I purposed in my heart that I will not defile myself. Daniel might have been interested of many things in his life, but primarily I want to concentrate on three different things, three different decisions Daniel probably could have, taken important decisions that he would have taken every day in his life. First thing is, first of all, he had to take part in the pagan education. So, when he had to do that, he could disregard those things he knew to be wrong or untrue. Even though he was educated on the Babylonian culture, he could say, well, this is all rubbish, I'm not going to take it. They got educated in multiple different things, but he just said, okay, this is true, this is wrong. So he just went along with that. Second thing is, they put him on a pagan name, but the name alone could not define who these people were. Right? And the third thing is, he had to give a pagan food or undefiled food. And then, at that point, he could not escape. He said, that's what, it's represented. So if you think about the last thing, what seemed so important to Daniel that he could have accepted the education, he could have accepted the name change or everything. But now he's saying that, okay, well, I'm not going to accept this third thing of taking part in the meal of the king. And he's purposed in his heart because he had a sense of priorities in his life. Why Daniel refused? Daniel was tested, and the first thing is, why did Daniel refuse to take part in the king's food? The first thing I would probably think is in sharing the king's table. First thing is, coming from a Jewish family, Jews are very orthodox. Their food, even now if you see, they have special aisles. If you go to Walmart, they have special aisles for Jewish foods. It's called kosher law, right? That's probably one of the reasons in the Old Testament of the kosher law that he did not want to be, that food being ritually unclean, he might have probably refused that food that the king offered him. The second thing is, all the wine and everything that the king has provided, the meal the king has provided, they could have previously offered to the idols. And that probably might be one of the reasons Daniel said, I'm not going to endorse for paganism. The tactic endorsement for paganism is said, time out. And then, third thing is, sharing a meal on the king's table has a significance. The significance is, if you share a meal with a friend, even now, even today it applies. If you share a meal with your friend, what you're telling them is, you are compromising on what that person is saying. Or you are actually endorsing what that person is saying. So, Daniel, it had a symbolic meaning. To eat the food in that situation is a moral compromise of everything Daniel believed. That probably might be the third reason, saying that, okay, you can change my name, that's fine. You can give me pagan education, that's fine. But if you want to share a meal with you, I'm, being a part of you, and I'm not going to compromise on that. And he said that that's a moral compromise, and Daniel drew a line on the sand saying that, I don't want to be a friend for you. I don't want to compromise of what I have in my heart. So that might be the third reason why Daniel could have probably refused the food. Certainly it's a risk. Think about this. If you are in a pagan land, a land of nowhere, and is talking to the chief of the eunuchs, and he's saying that, well, whatever king is offering, I don't want to take it, I don't like it. And I want my own special food. Of course, it's a simple menu. And he's saying that I want a special diet. Reveling a king who has actually conquered a land and standing in his courts, and he's saying that I don't want to take this food. My dear brothers and sisters, this teenager has the guts to say that. This teenager has the boldness to stand in the courts of the king and say that I'm not going to take this. You know what? He's risking his life. In the ancient days, if anybody rebelled against the king, either they are killed, right? Or first thing is they are killed. And the second thing, what Daniel is also doing is, he's completely messing up his career. Right? He's in a servant, he's in a king palace, and he could have gone any level up. And being so fussy about the food, what king was asking, he's probably putting his life on line. And then the second thing is, he's completely defiling his, he's completely, rocking his career altogether. That's what most of the people say. You can't climb the ladder while you are rocking the boat, right? He wants to climb the ladder, but at the same time rocking the boat with all these things. So, again, to the second point, why Daniel refused is because of the 3 points I've just mentioned. And the third sub-point is, excuses Daniel did not use. Daniel did not actually take an excuse saying that, hey, you know what? This king has completely ruined my family. I am in an isolated place. I'm a layman to this place. Basically, I don't have anybody in this Babylonian empire. What if I just take the food? Nobody's going to know about it, right? Who will know about it, if I take the food or not? God could only understand that it's only food, right? So he did not make that compromise or an excuse. People might think that I'm a narrow-minded legalist if I don't take this food. Maybe I'm making too much fuss of it. What is the big deal about it? That's not the excuse Daniel took. My dear brothers and sisters, we can always find an excuse when we don't want to do the right thing. We can always find an excuse. Excuses might be many number of things, when we don't want the right thing. But Daniel did not need an excuse because he has already decided in his heart that he's not going to defile his body. He's not using any excuses here. And then, that's another, where Daniel did not use an excuse. The Babylonians could change everything. His diet, his location, his education, his language, his name. But he could not change the Babylonian king could not change his heart. Why? Because it belongs to God. They could change everything. But when it comes to changing his heart, he said, like, no. You can change my name, but you can't change my heart because it belongs to Jesus. My dear brothers and sisters, when our hearts truly belong to Lord Jesus Christ, we'll be okay to face any situation in our lives. And we can take that step in saying that, okay, enough is enough. I'm not going to take that anymore. So, Daniel refused to take the food. And Daniel did, if you read the first 5-6 verses, he said like he wanted to be on a simple diet. He talked to the king, and then if you read verse 8 or 10, 8 to 9, so basically he's saying that, give me a 10-day miracle diet. What is this 10-day miracle diet? He's saying that, now give me a simple diet wherein I want to read that verse with me. Verse 12. Please test your servants for 10 days. Give us nothing but vegetables to eat and water to drink. And if you look at this diet, he talks to the chief and he says that, after he has refused to take the food, he says, I want a simple diet, and he says that, give me just vegetables to eat and water to drink. All of a sudden, you see in verse 10, verse 8, now God had caused the official to show favor and sympathy to Daniel. God did not show sympathy to Daniel after Daniel Daniel first of all took a decision saying that I'm not going to defile my body because of the defiled food. Once he did that, there comes the picture of God now. God did intervene at that time and say, and to the chief of the officers, and then he convinced his heart that he could put them on this, simple diet. It's not Daniel's decision, but this happened after Daniel's decision and not before Daniel's decision. And if you see that verse, Daniel did attempt here are some of the interesting, attractive things about the Daniel diet. Most of the people who are fasting, they say, okay, we'll take a Daniel diet. Daniel's diet is going to be vegetables with broccoli, or you have heard Pastor Sam talk about this many times. I want to read this in Telugu version, please. Daniel chapter 1 and verse 12.
భోజనమునకు శాఖధాన్యతలను పానమునకు నీళ్లను నీ దాసులముకు మాకిపించి దయచేసి 10 దినముల వరకు మమ్మను పరీక్షింపుము.
So basically it says vegetables in Telugu. If you read King James version, it says pulse. Anybody has King James version? No? So actually in King James version it says pulse. If you think about pulse is basically cereal, right? Shredded wheat. How can a person be on shredded wheat and water, but yet look strong? That's probably a miracle diet. 30-day food, lose 30 pounds in 30 days, right? You probably see them in Walmart and all the advertisement. We're talking about shredded wheat and water for 10 days, and imagine you and me taking that food. We're going to probably look pale, and then you're going to probably lose a lot of weight. But, Daniel, we'll not take that for now, but what he actually did was, one man of God said this: attempt great things for God and accept great things from God. This is William Carey who said that. Attempt great things from God and expect great things from God. So Daniel did make that attempt. He attempted that, okay, I'm going to refuse the diet what king is offering me and his life, his rest of his life. He is the master blaster in that kingdom. Any dream, anything, without even telling the dream, he could interpret that. He's been in the service for 60 years. And Daniel being tested, why Daniel tested, and excuses Daniel did not use. And the third thing is Daniel, 10-day miracle died. Here comes the next thing, Daniel reward. He's been tested. My dear brothers and sisters, we all go through testing phase. No matter what you are, you might have everything that you need in your life. We're all tested. The testing is basically for a reward. And Daniel is actually, the next thing is Daniel rewarded. If you think at this one, now I'm going to read a couple of verses from you. James chapter 1 and verse 12. If somebody has that verse, if you can read that for me. James chapter 1 and verse.
శోధన సహించువాడు ధన్యుడు.
Blessed is the man who perseveres under trial, because when he stood the test, he will receive the crown of life. This is a reward for people who have tested and came out successful, came out as good. And if you also read Matthew chapter 5 and verses 11 and 12, Matthew chapter 5 and verses 11 and 12.
Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven. For in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you.
Great is the reward in heaven. The reward sometimes, we might probably think, I've been tested on these things so many times. You probably may not see the reward on this earth at all. But your reward certainly is heaven. There's a heavenly reward, and there's also something called an openly reward. Let me point you to that scripture verse, Matthew chapter 6 and verse 1 to 4. Here our Lord Jesus gives an openly reward. I think if you read from an ESV, it doesn't say that, but if you read from the KJV, it says that you are rewarded openly. Somebody has that, please. Matthew chapter 6, 1 and 4. 1 to 4.
But when you do your charitable deed, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, that your charitable deed may be in secret, and your Father who sees in secret will himself reward you openly.
Will himself reward you openly. My dear brothers and sisters, some of the testings what we go, we don't see a reward in this earth at all. We probably try and give it up sometimes, saying, okay, well, God is not hearing my prayers anymore. And sometimes we lose hope, and then just do things of our own. But there's a reward that is given openly on this earth, but there's a reward that we get in the heaven. So Daniel has been rewarded, and sometimes we also might think, why isn't God letting me do this? And I've been praying for this for many years, and I've been tested, but I don't see the reward. Read with me Isaiah chapter 55 and verse 8 and 9. Isaiah chapter 55 and verse 8 and 9.
For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts.
My dear brothers and sisters, what we think is not God is thinking. What we walk is not what God wants us to walk. His thoughts are wiser than our thoughts. His ways are higher than our ways. That's the reason, the testing is out for our good. So we could come out as shining gold when we test, when we are in the testing. So Daniel has been rewarded here. So they could change his culture, but they could not change his character. They could change his nature, but they could not change his heart, because it has belongs to Jesus. And now Daniel is going through this, he came out as the cream rises. Daniel came out as cream in the Babylonian kingdom. He's been, when the king Nebuchadnezzar, when he had that interpretation, and none of the Chaldeans or none of the people in his court, they could answer his dream. They said, okay, go kill everybody. Everybody in his kingdom, all the Chaldeans and all the officials and everybody, kill everybody, because they are trying to deceive me and they're trying to waste time. If you read Daniel 1:2, you could see that. They're just trying to waste time because they can't really tell my dream and interpret my dream. But Daniel, he came as a shining star in the Babylonian kingdom. First of all, the decision he took made him stand up on what he believed. He believed that he is not going to defile his heart. And the second thing is, he honored what he has decided. My dear brothers and sisters, there's a reason I have this one on the PowerPoint. If you honor God, God is going to honor you. No matter what it is. If our focus is on God, and our focus is on honoring God, God will honor you. That's the reason I put it there. It's honor, honor just God. It's not a motto. It should not be a motto for us saying that, okay, I'm going to honor God. But it has to be it has to be more than a motto. It has to be, it's a movement for us. We have to live and experience and just honor God in our lives. So, the next thing is, we read all these things and, Daniel tested and Daniel came out fine. If you read, 1 Samuel chapter 2 and verse 30, we read that passage. 1 Samuel chapter 2 and verse 30. I'm going to give the context here. Most of you are familiar with this context here. Hannah had a child, and now Hannah is actually bringing the child to the priest, Eli. And then the priests of, the sons of Eli and the servants of Eli were so wicked. In those days, if you read the chapter, you'll understand. In those days, it's a culture that they bring the sacrifices, animal sacrifices, to the house of God. When they do the animal sacrifices, they boil water. When they boil water, what they do is they get sacrifices, and then they put the meat in that, and then they take a tree branched, some kind of thing, and then they'll dip the meat out of it, and then that meat goes to the priest as a sacrifice. That's what they do. With the sacrifices they bring for offering, that portion of the meat goes to the king. So what these wicked people are telling is, even before, there's a primary reason why they do that. When they put the meat in the boiling water, all the fat is actually burnt out. That's one of the reasons they do that. Now in that, the servants of Eli, they said like, okay, well, give me meat, give us meat even before you put it in the boiling water, because we want raw meat. And then they started insisting people to give them raw meat. And then, this people who came to sacrifice, they said they couldn't do it. And then they started taking the raw meat by force. And God did not like that. God was very upset with that. And he was so angry with what the servants of the king Eli was doing. And also his own children. If you turn with me to 1 Samuel chapter 2, verse 27. Now a man got 27. No, I think it's probably going to be. We'll just read. 1 Samuel chapter 2 and okay, it's verse 12. Eli's sons were so wicked, they had no regard for the Lord. Now it was the practice of the priests with the people that whenever one offered a sacrifice and while the meat was being boiled, we just read those things. And then if you read verse 17, this sin of the young man was, the sin what they did was, the young man was very great in the sight of the Lord, and they were treating the Lord's offering with contempt. And then what actually the Eli's ones were doing is they were actually sinning. If you read verse 22, now Eli, I think it's... So the Lord was pretty angry with the sons of Eli, and what he said was, if you read verse 30, therefore the Lord, the God of Israel, declares, I promise that your house and your father's house would minister before me forever. but now the Lord declares, far be to me from me, those who honor me I will honor, but those who despise me will I despise. The time is coming, those who honor me, that's the key thing, that those who honor me will I honor, those who despise me will I despise. The time is coming when I will cut short your strength and the strength of your father's house, so that there will not be an old man in your family life, and you will see the bristles in your dwelling. And then if you keep on reading, the two sons, Ophni and Phinehas, they will both die at the same time, because they did not honor the Lord. They were so content, they were only focusing about the earthly things. And no, my dear brothers and sisters, if you honor God, God will honor us. No matter what it is, no matter what the circumstances, no matter what we go through. If our heart is on God, if our focus is on God, and if you just honor God, God will honor us. You know, there's this song, I want Sachin to play for this. Dare to be a Daniel, dare to stand alone, dare to have a purpose firm, and dare to make it known. Listen to this song, it has very good lyrics in that.
Standing by a purpose true, heeding God's command, other than the faithful few, all hail to Daniel's band. Dare to be a Daniel, dare to stand alone, dare to have a purpose firm, dare to make it known. Many giants great and tall, stalking through the land, headlong to the earth would fall if met by Daniel's band. Dare to be a Daniel, dare to stand alone, dare to have a purpose firm, dare to make it known. Hold the gospel banner high on to victory grand. Satan and his host defy and shout for Daniel's band. Dare to be a Daniel, dare to stand alone, dare to have a purpose firm, dare to make it known.
As after this saying, boy, dare to be a Daniel. My dear brothers and sisters, lessons for us today afternoon. First lesson, the world will continually try to reprogram us in a different way of thinking. The world will continually try to reprogram us in a different way of our thinking. You know, Daniel went to a systematic brainwashing. You know, changing his name, changing his education, changing his location, a new diet, a new culture, a new language, and ultimately a new name. You know, the world will reprogram us in many different ways. You know, but our focus should be on honoring God. You know, most of the time, you know, the world, the Satan tries us to, you know, reprogram us in many different ways. It gives us new promotions, so we go out of astray from God. It gives us new opportunities, new education opportunities, and many things. And you know, Antichrist and whatever, you know, the kids going to school and all those things. You know, the world tries to continuously reprogram us many different ways. You know, but we have to keep our focus in just honoring God. If I just honor God, God will honor me. And then, you know, our youngsters are most at risk for, you know, the world that continuously would change. And, you know, even after 2,000 years of this, 2,500 years after this incident of Daniel has happened, the world is still trying to reprogram us. It is always trying to take us away from the will of God in honoring God. You know, we have to keep our focus on, you know, we have to draw a line that's saying that, okay, you know, you have to make, my dear brothers and sisters, I want to come back here, step back for a minute. You have to take a decision at some point in life. And the decision, you probably may not be given an opportunity to take that decision at the spur of the moment. Your decision has to be beforehand. When you take that decision, God will take care of the rest. My dear brothers and sisters, if you haven't really taken the decision that I'm not going to defile myself, you know, it's individual decision, individual testing. whatever it could be, whatever you are going through, if you make a decision, if you make an oath before God saying that, no matter what, I'm not going to do this, and God will take care of the rest. You don't have to worry about it. God will take care of the rest. That's what happened to Daniel. He made a decision, God took care of the rest. He spoke with the chief of the eunuchs and convinced him, and he was on this miracle diet for the rest of his life. He did not touch, the goat meat or the cheesesteak meat or whatever is on the king's meal. He just was on a regular diet that he could not defile his body. So the world continues to try to reprogram us in many different things in our lives, but our focus and our direction should be just honoring God. And the next thing is, we must make up, I just touched on this, we must make up our decision well in advance, and we must be loyal to that. If you look at this decision Daniel took the decision. It was a simple decision. He's saying that, I'm not going to take this food. And then it was very easy for him to test, saying that, okay, he did not say, okay, give me this meal for 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years, or nothing like that. Give me this meal for 10 days. And then after 10 days, you come back and test me. And then the testing was very oral examination. He didn't do any other education testing or anything like that. It's simply an oral examination. Looking at his appearance and all those things, whether he is on par with the people who are taking the king's diet. It was so simple for the chief to test these people whether they are strong with the diet. All the 4 people were actually strong with the diet. We must make the decisions well in advance. When we make the decision, we leave rest to God, God will take care of us. And we must know our limits, and we must not do what is wrong. We need to know our limits. Everybody has their own limits. And Daniel had a limit saying that I'm not going to touch this food. I'm not going to defile myself in touching the good. That was his limit. You and I have our own limits. Just think about it, where have I defiled myself? Where have I defiled my soul? Where have I defiled my body? Where have I gone wrong? And if you draw a line and say that, okay, I'm not going to go further than this, and I'm going to stick to this, I'm going to make a decision, I'm going to make up my mind that I'm not going to do this no matter what, God will absolutely going to intervene and take care of it. My dear brothers and sisters, if you haven't made a decision, think about this. Where you want to honor God. And we need to know our limits and where we could, where we went wrong and what we need to do. And the third and the last thing is, God conviction sells God-given rewards. If you are convicted of God, you'll get a God-given rewards. The earthly rewards are for good, they're good for us. But if God's conviction yields on us, God will give us that, the rewards. My dear brothers and sisters, if Romans chapter 8 and verse 31 says, if God is for us, if God is with us, who can be against us? Nobody can be against us. If you draw your limits, if you draw your decisions and saying that this is what my decision is, God will take care of it, because if He has given these rewards are not for timid people. If you are scared about something, saying that, man, I don't want to take this decision, because if I take this decision, something might happen. Rewards are not for timid people. You have to be bold, you have to be strong, you have to make the decision. And if you make that decision, and then if you make sure you be loyal to God for what you have decided, we will get that reward for us. These days, teenagers are at high risk for all of these things. We have to, there are kids in the elementary school and, in the high school and the middle school who are bombarded and influenced with many different things. I would take an example here. My son went to a preschool for 2 years to a Christian school, and now he's going for a public school. The first thing he comes and asks me after the Christmas program is, Dad, why are they not praying in the class? Why are they not singing, O Come All Ye Faithful At the Harp? Man, those were tough questions for me to answer. I could not answer. Our education is changing. Our kids are bombarded with no religion, atheism. My dear brothers and sisters, we have to pray for our youngsters. We have to pray for our teenagers. And that was a tough question for me to ask. The kings, our children, should be courageous to say no with a certain voice. You have to be courageous to say with a loud voice, saying that say no to sex and yes to abstinence. Say no to alcohol. Say no to gang fights and beer in healthy relationships. Say no to moral filth and yes to the Word of God. And say no to sin but yes to Christ Jesus. But say no to temptation but yes for God. Say no to covenants and being bold for our Lord Jesus Christ. Saying no to sexual compromise and yes, waiting until marriage. And say no to the chains of sin and yes to the freedom of God. Saying no is very difficult. We might be probably wondering, what is the big fuss about just taking the food? He changed everything. He changed his nature, he changed his language, he changed his dress. What is big fuss about? But that transformed Daniel's life for 60 years. My dear brothers and sisters, and even the youngsters, we have to be ready to say no. When you know that it's not in the God's will and it's not biblical, we have to be ready to say no for that. And we go to many moral crises, and then if you start compromising on things, there's something you have to pay back for that. I'm going to take an example here. 400 years, there was a 400-year redwood tree in a forest. And all of a sudden, without any warning, this redwood tree, which was a 400-year-old tree, just toppled down into the forest. And then people were looking, okay, what was the cause of this? It was so majestic. What was the death of such a majestic giant tree? Was it a lightning or a storm or a strong wind and a fire or whatnot, And the postmortem examination, they did an examination on the tree after a 400-year tree just toppling down. And then the results were startling. And then, what happened was the tiny beetles had crawled under the barks and literally ate the fibers from the inside. Although it looked healthy from outside, inside it was all virtually hollow and filled and with nothing, and then it just collapsed. My dear brothers and sisters, if we start compromising on little things in our lives, the little things will become big. You might be looking thoroughly perfect from outside, but God looks at your heart. And if you start compromising on little things in our lives, those little things are going to become big one day. And it's going to become big one day to an extent where you cannot take it back anymore. Like the tree, the tree which was a 400-year-old, we also read about, given an example in the past about the rattlesnake, where the person tries to get the bites of the rattlesnake, and then the poison just accumulates and it just faints. If you compromise on little things in our lives, and if it's not right, my dear brothers and sisters, from the inside, you are being spoiled. You might be looking perfectly from outside, but from the inside, you are just like that 400-year giant tree, which was hollow from inside. All the beetles have taken up all the fiber and everything from inside. My dear brothers and sisters, question for you and me is, how are we from inside? Have we made a decision? Have we said no to anything in our lives in the past? Or we have 11 more months in this new year. We can still say no. In the beginning of the year, say, oh, I'm going to say no to this filth. I'm going to say no to this. I'm going to say no to this pornography. I'm going to say no to all the filthy language I talk with my friends. I'm going to say no to my friends at work wherein they talk all ungodly things. I'm going to, it's personal. Just think about it for a while. Where did you compromise on things? The world continuously tries to reprogram us, to take us away from the will of God. Absolutely. But then we have to take your ground and say, I'm not going to do this anymore. My dear brothers and sisters, I'm going to play a video just